developed for human use, the landscape changes. We don't see as many types of vegetation, trees, brushes, and so forth. This in turn leads to other losses, the loss of animals that once lived there. But these are the obvious changes, but there are also less obvious changes like the climate. One interesting case of this of changes in the local land use causing changes in climate, specifically the temperatures is in Florida. Now, what comes to mind when you think of the state of Florida? Sunshine, beaches, warm weather, oranges. Yes, exactly. Florida has long had a great citrus industries, large growth of oranges, lemons, and the like. Florida's winter is very mild. The temperature doesn't often get below freezing, but there are some areas in Florida that do freeze. So in the early 1900s, farmers moved ever further south in Florida to areas that were even less likely to freeze. Obviously, freezing temperatures are a danger to the crop. A bad barrier of cold weather, a long spell of frost could ruin a farm and the entire crop. Anyway, before these citrus growers moved south, much of the land in South Florida was what we called wetland. Wetlands were areas of marshy, swampy land, areas where water covers the soil or is present either or at or near the surface of the soil for large parts of the year. Wetlands have their own unique ecosystem with plants and animals with special and interesting adaptation. Very exciting, but it's not what we are talking about today. Where was I? Farmers moved south. Oh yes, farmers moved south, but the land was not suitable for farming. You can't grow oranges in wetland, so farmers had to transform the wetland into land suitable for farming. To do that, you have to drain the water from the land, move the water elsewhere, and divert to the water sources such as rivers. Hundreds of miles of drainage canals were built in the wetland. Now, these areas, the new areas the farm moved to, used to be warm and unlikely to freeze. However, recently the area has become susceptible to freeze, and we are trying to understand why. Is it some global temperature change or weather pattern like El Nino or something? Well, there are two theories. One idea is, as you suggested, that major weather patterns such as something like El Nino are responsible. But the other idea, and this is the one that I personally subscribe to, is all the changes in the temperature pattern had been brought about by the loss of wetland. Well, how does the loss of wetland makes a difference? Well, think about what we've been studying so far. We discussed the impact of landscape on temperature, right? What affects the body of water exactly? What you just said is what I want you all to understand. The body's water releases heat and moisture back into the environment. So places near large bodies of water are generally milder and slightly warmer than those without water. And what I another thing another thing is that the loss of the wetland has created a situation where the local temperature in the area are not slightly different, slightly colder than they were 100 years ago. Before the wetland were drained, do we know what the temperature was like back then? Well, we are able to estimate this. We have data about South Florida's current landscape. The front cover, and we are able to reconstruct data about the landscape prior to 1900. Then we enter those data information about what the landscape looked like before and after the wetland was drained. We enter the data into a computer with a model. This model can predict temperatures, and when all the data were entered, an overall cooling trend was predicted by the model. How much colder does it get now? Well, actually, the model shows a drop of only a few degrees Celsius, but this is enough to cause dramatic damage to crops. If temperatures overnight are already very close to freezing point, then this drop of just a few degrees can take the temperature below freezing. And freezing causes frosts which kill crops. This damaging frost wouldn't happen if the wetlands were still in existence, just as a tiny temperature difference can have major consequences. あ、っていうのconsequence。合ってた。